Muško. Muško. Ženska.
Žensko-muška.
Klackalica.
Siso.
Gender. Siso.
Što su specifičnosti koje možete istaknuti i na koje ste naišli tijekom istraživanja u svojoj zemlji?
Ja mogu govoriti o generalnim specifičnostima. To je dakle jedno istraživanje koje je regionalno, koje obuhvaća 4 zemlje, Hrvatsku, Sloveniju i Zapadnu Makedoniju. I kao takvo je negdje na traženju nekakvog najboljeg pristupa i metodologije kako da se dođe do što relevantnijih podataka. Jer je važno istaknuti nekoliko stvari, da pitanje rodnog jaza u plaćama ima nekako svoju povijest na ovim prostorima i ako uzmemo bivšu Jugoslaviju, onda smo mi imali propisano da je jednak rad i jednako su plaćeni i muškarci i žene, međutim s vremenom se ipak to pokazalo da je to više deklarativno nego što to u stvarnosti živi. A u ovom istraživanju nas je posebno zanimalo kako stojimo s tim rodnim jazom u plaćama u vrijeme pandemije. Eto, a sad za mene su kao istraživača koji treba integrirati te podatke i koji je trebao napraviti i treba napraviti još i dalje komparativnu studiju, je pitanje relevantnosti, jer se pokazuje da u nekim zemljama ne postoje statistički relevantni podaci, u drugim zemljama poput Hrvatske i Slovenije je to nešto bolje stanje, Makedonija je u nešto lošijem stanju i to je sad onda pitanje dviju stvari. Prvo, da sva istraživanja moraju biti negdje kontekstualno osjetljiva i da moraju negdje uvažiti specificitete pojedinih država u kojima se provodi. A drugo, da općenito se kaže i u literaturi, i literatura kaže o tome da je rodni jaz u plaćama jedan od važnih indikatora prisutnosti korupcije u pojedinoj zemlji. Dakle, što je to više ujednačeno, za očekivati je da je manji stupanj korupcije. I nas je zapravo u ovom istraživanju zanimali su nas ti dublji razlozi. Sad, zbog ovih nekih ograničenja koja su se pokazala, vidjet ćemo u kom opsegu ćemo moći ići duboko i u zaključcima i kasnije u preporukama. Međutim, i nekada nepostojanje podataka je isto jedan važan podatak, da tako kažem.
Što se tiče Republike Hrvatske, ideja je kao i u odnosu na ostale zemlje bila da se pokuša identificirati potencijalni učinak epidemije bolesti COVID-19 na gospodarstvo i posebno na kretanje rodnog jaza u plaćama. U istraživanju se krenulo od 2019. kao godine koja je prethodila pojavi epidemije bolesti COVID-19 kada je jaz u plaćama iznosio 12,8%. Već u idućoj godini podaci pokazuju da se rodni jaz u plaćama smanjio na 6,9%, što je za nas bio evidentan indikator da epidemija bolesti COVID-19 ima učinak na gospodarstvo i posredno na rodni jaz u plaćama. Druga tendencija koja se pokazala u istraživanju evidentnom jest da je nakon toga pada u 2020. Rodni jaz u plaćama počeo ponovno rasti, tako da je u 2021. godini bio 7% i u 2022. 7,4%.
When it comes to North Macedonia, the situation with the unadjusted gap, I have to mention that we are talking about the unadjusted gap, which is the overall difference between the salaries of men and women, is similar to that of Croatia. It was similar before the COVID times, around 12 or 13%, depending on which sources we are referring to, but it's one of the main findings for the North Macedonia is that after COVID, we have failed in producing important research data and having fresh data for analyzing the post-COVID period. it's not only North Macedonia that is affected with this situation. Like, for example, the European Workforce Demand Survey, which is strongly used by the Eurostat for producing labor statistics, has also been postponed during COVID times. So it is a general situation of losing yourself in data and trying to get on your feet again. Because somebody today mentioned that crisis is a Greek word and it means making decisions. So we have failed at making decisions during crisis, and that's one of the most important findings regarding North Macedonia. The gap is not that big compared to the European average, but still we have a lot of discrimination at workplace when it comes to women, especially for lower paid professions and sectors that are mainly segregated, where women are mainly segregated, like the care sector, educational sector, as well as public sector, including healthcare, which was on the front of COVID fight, and women were bearing the whole burden, including care of children because of the lockdowns and the schools being closed during the COVID times. So there is a huge gray area that needs to be researched even further and deeper, as Radojka said, but we need more data to dig deeper into the reasons behind and find more fresh statistics to discuss the current situation in North Macedonia.
Regarding Slovenia, we can see that the unadjusted gender pay gaps stand at low levels when we are comparing EU 27 in Slovenia. What is also very important to mention is that during the crisis, the gender pay gap in Slovenia decreases. For example, it was at the lowest level in 2009, and then when women had higher wages on average, and then increased to 9.3% in 2018, to decrease again to 3.8% in 2021. During the COVID times, the employment rates of men and women both decreased, but more for men than for women. It is important to mention that women in Slovenia are employed full-time, and almost all women are working. We are also among countries where the employment rates of women with children is higher than of that without children. It's also important to mention that the gender pay gap is higher for younger labor market entrants and people that are establishing their own families. I think this really has a huge impact on the gender wage gap generation, and it then translates into the whole life, and it can be seen also after retirement. The pay gap is also higher in public than in private sector, and the gaps are the largest for most educated at the highest positions and with the most responsible jobs. The education of women is also higher than for men in Slovenia, so this is all lowering the unadjusted gender pay gaps, which are much higher when we look at the sectoral level or at the level of the workplaces. And I think this is what is really important, to increase the transparency of wages, to see where the pay gaps are actually generated at the workplace level, and I think this will bring new insights into the issue.
Prema vašem mišljenju, koji su razlozi i na koji način ovakva istraživanja mogu doprinijeti boljitku društva i na koje ste prepreke nailazili tijekom istraživanja?
So the question is threefold, but I will try to start from the beginning. The reasons why, because data can feed our policies to be more inclusive and to include everyone in the society. We mentioned today that women are often a majority in a society. That usually it's half-half, but still, for example, in North Macedonia we have 51% of women. Female population, and still they're treated like minority because they're treated as second-rate persons in the country, because they're excluded from the policies just because we lack gender disaggregated data. So if you don't know the figures, it's very difficult to have policies which are inclusive and addressing the needs of all the citizens. And when we take into account that at the decision-making positions, women are lacking the most, then it's really important to have such data so that we can fit the policies even though women are excluded from the table where the policies are made. So that would be the most important reason for such studies, as well as for in betterment of our society in general, because this way, for example, if we do an analysis in the care sector, which is part of our gender pay gap analysis, we can clearly see the need for investing in education and preschool education and care for children and elderly, because this is one of the main reasons why half of the population of women in North Macedonia are excluded from the workforce. So when it comes to main obstacles for this research, there were so many, and one of the main problems in terms of North Macedonia, I would say, is systematical and timely collection of data. So we do have data, but it's not systematically collected and not in a timely manner. As well as transparency, my colleague Andrea mentioned that even in Slovenia, we have issues with not only transparency of data, but also transparency of data when it comes to salaries. This is something that is a huge obstacle when it comes to this research, because especially in the private sector, salaries are not transparent, and even though there is a new directive in the EU on transparency of pay, we are far behind from adopting it, not to mention implementing it. So I would say this is one of the most important issues that we need to address with our study.
Due to the fact that the unadjusted gender pay gaps are so low in Slovenia, the politicians do not pay much attention, and this is really not an important topic. They don't even discuss it, nor maybe on the 8th of March everybody is saying, yeah, equal pay for equal work, but that is it. And I think that this kind of studies really show the differences and can raise awareness. So that is why I'm really happy that I can be a part of this research, which can help to improve the society in the future. Yeah, because if we measure, if we show where the differences are coming from, we are able to reduce them and to finally come to equal pay for equal work. Maybe last thing is I would like to mention is that for 80 years we already have enshrined in legislation this right to equal pay, but it's still not implemented in the practice. And maybe it is time to raise awareness and to make it happen in the real life.
Po mojem mišljenju, najveća korist od ovog projekta je zapravo sadržana u okolnosti da se na temelju nalaza istraživanja mogu utemeljiti preporuke. U odnosu na Hrvatsku svakako bi preporuka bila da se inzistira na ravnomjernom porastu prosječnih plaća i muškaraca i žena radi uspostave rodnog jaza na višim razinama gdje bi onda dolazilo automatski do njegovog smanjenja. Pored toga potrebno je poduzeti mjere u cilju drukčijeg rasporeda vertikalne i horizontalne segregacije. Pored toga treba raditi na usklađivanju privatnog poslovnog života, uspostaviti bolju antidiskriminacijsku zaštitu i u smislu informiranja radnika i radnica o toj temi, a isto tako i u stvaranju pretpostavki za poduzimanje učinkovitih postupaka. Pored toga, dobro bi bilo i osigurati dublju strukturu statističkih podataka, što je jedna od poteškoća s kojima smo se suočavali svi manje više u ovom istraživanju, i nadam se da će i direktiva o transparentnosti plaća koja je nedavno stupila na snagu potaknuti države koje sudjeluju u ovom istraživanju da unaprijede statističke podatke u tom smislu. U svakom slučaju, kao nekakva ultimativna korist od ovog projekta je što će kroz svoje preporuke zapravo postaviti razinu provedbe ravnopravnosti spolova na jednoj višoj razini.
Ja ću reći negdje da je temeljna težnja svih nas da živimo u pravednijem društvu, u društvu bez diskriminacije, i da nekakve učinkovite intervencije prema tom stremljenju mogu doći samo iz dobrih istraživanja koje će se temeljiti na relevantnim podacima i onda mjerama koje nas mogu voditi ka tom putu.
Žensko-muška. Gender. Seesaw. Klackalica.
Gender Network has produced this podcast in cooperation with FEPS, Foundation for European Progressive Studies.